Yeah, it's like an ego thing. Why are you licking my knee? How long does it take to die? Tick. His victims would say forever. Tock. At each horrific scene he leaves a clock ticking. He calls himself the watchmaker, and it's only a matter of time before he strikes again. It's rhyme time. And I'm sorry, I read that line and I was like... Bad Jeffrey. Bad Jeffrey. With model turned cop Amelia Sachs. You're better than this. Stop it. It's not rhyme time. If you can hear that, that is my rabbit eating the book. So if you want to know, keep around for that wild ride at the end there. Hi, I am reading Jeffrey Deaver, The Cold Moon. Look how it fits to my top. The reason I'm reading this, I hadn't planned on reading this, right? But my phone broke. And so all the things that I would usually use my phone for, I was like, well, I want to read instead. But I couldn't start reading a new book because I had no way of filming an intro for it. And I was like... So I and then the other books that I had, I didn't want to read. So it's like, oh! So then eventually I decided on reading this book because I don't care as much about this book. And it's been staring at me for months. If you've seen my cover video where I picked my next book by a cover, you will know this book. I rated this cover a 1 because look at it. It's boring. Sorry, Jeffrey. It's very boring. Like, what's this grey? And what is this illustration? Like, it's not very pretty. And also, I talked about the fact that it's staring at me like this. So I think the book is titled Deaver. But that's actually his name. And I do not like when people put their own name bigger than the title of the book. It makes me think it's an ego thing. And it makes me think that they think that their book or that their name is more important than the book. And if you're Stephen King, that's all nice and fine, but you're not. Right, I got kicked out of the living room because I've been filming for like 4 hours. But yes, I'm talking to you about Jeffrey Deaver. So I picked it, and yeah, it's like an ego thing. Why are you licking my knee? You big old weirdo. Do you want to come on camera? Come here. Isn't she cute? Right. So yeah, it feels like an ego thing, right? And I'm sorry, Jeffrey. Like, I don't know if this is you. I don't know if you think you as a person are more important than the book you wrote. But this is how I receive it as the reader. Like, to me, it comes... Oh my god, my knee's cold now because she licked it. But to me, it, like, arrives as I'm more important than the book I read. So, yeah, I'm not a fan. But anyways, it's been staring at me, it's been bugging me. Like, you know when a book keeps staring at you? Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. This one was, like, bugging me in a bad way. I was like, I want to read it so I can remove it. Because it's bugging me. So I started reading it because I didn't really care. I didn't know what it was about actually anymore because I hadn't read it in ages. And when I was doing the video, I didn't read the back because it was all about the cover. So I will read you the back. How long does it take to die? Tick. His victims would say forever. Tock. At each horrific scene he leaves a clock ticking. He calls himself the watchmaker, and it's only a matter of time before he strikes again. It's rhyme time. And I'm sorry, I read that line and I was like... Bad Jeffrey. Bad Jeffrey. Like, I almost put the book down when he said that. I was like, it's rhyme time. And it's... Lincoln Rhyme is the best there is. Which, can we talk about this? It's like the romantasy thing, where the male romantic lead is like the most beautiful and muscular and sexy man alive. When you look at thrillers, the detective is always the best there is. The world-renowned detective, or like, you know, the world's most dangerous serial killer. Like, I find, I talked about this before, that in the past I would read a lot of romantasy, what would now be romantasy. Back then it was just fantasy, and thrillers. And having read them, I can attest to the fact that it's always the detective is always like the best there is. The very best detective. No one is gonna be able to solve this crime aside from Rhyme. Anyways, Lincoln Rhyme is the best there is. Physically, he may face unimaginable challenges, but mentally he has no limits. Now, look, this sentence, I was totally in. I was like, oh, so he has like a disability. How interesting. Jeffrey, why couldn't you just anyways. With model turned cop Amelia Sachs as his eyes, ears, and heart, Rhyme is on the watchmaker's trail within seconds. I've read I've started reading a book the 40 pages or something, so I'm like, that's not really true, but anyways. But he's not the only one gifted with a calculating intelligence. In this time, his wits must be sharper than ever to catch a killer cold as the moon. I'm sorry. There are some interesting bits, oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, you didn't need to see my boobs then. I can't do this. I'm too small. There are some interesting bits, like the fact that Rhyme is disabled, apparently. Or, the watchmaker. I'm not sure why people do this, the TikTok. But, they did it on Stalker and Nightmare as well, remember? It's a thriller thing. Anyways, so there's some interesting thing. Okay. But then, it's wrapped into a lot of, very horrible writing, as far as I'm concerned. And now, the thing is, right, I started reading the book. I'm about 36 pages in. So I know a little bit already. And I know that a detective literally was like, oh, this is an interesting case. So it's not like Rhyme was like, my spidey sense is tingling. But I already know that the writing in this book is actually better than what's on the bloody back. Why did you do this, Jeffrey? And it's already mentioned some really interesting bits that I actually found interesting. And I can say that because it's so early on in the book. It's not a spoiler. You get the perspective of the killer this early on. And I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that before. Very interesting. So, I'm actually enjoying the book so far. It's a really good book so far. The writing's pretty good. The characterization is pretty good. It mentions some really, it brings up some interesting points. I like the fact that the serial killer, we already know who the killer is. These are all interesting things to me. The fact about Rhyme's disability and how he became disabled, that's all interesting to me. But honestly, based on the back of this book, if I hadn't picked it up by the side of the road, because I thought, maybe, when I'm bored, I'll read this book, I would have never picked it up. Jeffrey, you're better than this. Stop it. It's not rhyme time. If you can hear that, that is my rabbit eating the book. Can you stop? Bun! I'm gonna... Look at her licking it. It's her book now. She's chinned it as well, which is a funny thing that they do, where it's like, that's mine now. you're gonna make the book wet. Okay, she clearly approves of Jeffrey Deaver. She thinks he's very delicious. Are you okay? Are you well? There she goes, chinning it again. Is it your book now? What a weirdo. How wet it is. Now she's licking my knee again. I love bunnies. I would highly encourage you to get a bunny if you do the research and you know you actually want to have an animal that is gonna destroy everything you own. Just licking my knees again. But also, they are weirdos. Hey, I'm just giving you a quick update to tell you that I started a new job about 2 months ago now, and I gave myself some time to get settled and all that. But then I was like, there is no book club. There should be a book club. So, and luckily people were quite keen on the idea. So I set one up, and we're having our first meeting on Friday. Because this organization I'm working for now is much, much bigger than any company I've ever worked for before, I have like 25 people who are interested in coming to the book club. And I'm like, wow, it's going to be a lot of people. Imagine they all want to speak. So I'm going to have to work out how to manage that. But what a lovely problem to have, right? So, yeah. It's gonna be really amazing, and I can't wait. Book clubs are great. Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Book Club book club. I have officially finished Jeffrey Deaver, The Cold Moon. I feel like I've been reading this book for months, and I probably have. It's a very thick book. It's like 550 something pages, like an epic. I don't know why thrillers need to be this thick. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, let's dive in. So, as I think I've already stated, I think that the book itself is actually much, much better than the horrible, horrible blurb on the back. The writing in it wasn't as bad, and even though it was a very long book, I was actually quite entertained throughout, and I was gripped and wanted to keep reading throughout, so that's quite good. The plot was quite interesting, so just to explain again, essentially the plot is famous crime scene analyst / forensic analyst, I don't know what his official title is, Lincoln Rhyme, is tasked with finding out what a series of murders is about, committed by a dude termed the Watchmaker, because he leaves like an antique watch with all of the victims that they have found. And Lincoln Rhyme, who's like this amazing, obviously genius crime person, is basically tasked with working out what is going on and like finding out who is committing these crimes, that sort of thing. Like, I think I already mentioned this from the start, we actually get two perspectives. We get very much the what's happening on the crime scene sort of thing, but we also from the start get the mind of the actual killer itself. So we dive into the mind of the people committing, sorry, spoiler, there's two of them. It's literally like the first chapter, so I don't think it's that much of a spoiler. Of the people committing these crimes, which was very unique. I don't think I've ever really come across a book that does that, where like from the beginning you know who it is, you kind of know what they're doing, sort of thing. So that was very unique, and I found that very interesting. It also, as the book went on, there came the juxtaposition of Rhyme, who very much relies on crime scene evidence, like hairs, fibers, that sort of thing, forensic stuff, being weighed against the more human aspect, because Rhyme as a person, he's a very interesting person, seemingly purposely made that way, to be very anti-people, you know, very isolated type of person, and he basically then starts having to work with what's essentially to me like a lie to me type of person, Catherine Dance, who is basically all about speaking to people and finding out the truth that way. And it's like this juxtaposition of like, is it forensic evidence or her evidence that's gonna bring it together, and then them trying to like almost have a bit of a rivalry and like work out what's happening. So that was quite nice. Obviously, like I said, Rhyme is obviously a very interesting kind of guy. He's not very sociable, and I do have some quotes about to kind of show you who Rhyme is. So this is a quote that's from so basically he's a paraplegic, as I think it's mentioned in the blurb, which I found very interesting. Essentially, from what I gather, because this is obviously a series of books featuring Rhyme, so from what I gather, he used to be a cop, but then had a horrible accident where a beam fell on him and paralyzed him, essentially, from the neck down. He's then made a new life for himself, living with a carer and doing physical therapy and working as a forensic analysis with a lot of like technical support for and what he does is he works with police detectives, especially Emilia Sachs, who's his partner as well, like life partner, not just police partner. And she will go to crime scenes and essentially tell him what she sees through like a little headset thing. So this is like when she's doing that, and she's talking to him, and she basically, it says, it's third person perspective, it says here, she slipped rubber bands around her feet to distinguish her prints from the perps. Another of Rhyme's ideas. But why bother? I'm into Tyvek, Rhyme, not street shoes, Sachs had once pointed out. He had looked at her warily. Oh, excuse me, I guess a perp would never think to buy a Tyvek suit. How much do they cost, Sachs? $49.95? So, like, that's sort of, he's very grading. He's kind of says exactly what he thinks. He's not the type to kind of, he essentially is very direct and a bit of a dick, I suppose, but like you kind of like him for it. And he, I guess, gets away with it because obviously he's a genius. I think I might have another quote to kind of show him and who he is. Oh yeah, so he has a dog, a helper dog called Jackson. Oh no, he doesn't have. He has a dog called Jackson. It's not a helper dog. And this is a conversation between him and Dance. Before she put on her latex gloves, she walked to a canister and pulled out a few dog biscuits, fed them to Jackson. He ate them down fast. "Do you ever think about getting a helper dog?" Catherine Dance asked Rhyme. "He is a helper dog." "Jackson," Sax frowned. "Yes, he helps plenty. He distracts people so I don't have to entertain them." So like that's kind of like who he is as a person. His relationship with Sax is quite sweet, but it's not very explored. I suppose that kind of comes through like the different books. You get more and more of their relationship, so I'm not going to read any more of the books, so I would have quite liked more of their relationship, but they seem to have quite a nice, deep, committed relationship. So yeah, I mean, I clearly cared. I remember there was a moment where I had to not continue reading this book because I had to start reading a book club book, so I had to like stop reading this book so I can read the book club book, which was Persians. And I remember I finished reading it at a very interesting point. So Ryan works with a few police people, like Emilia Sachs, like a detective named Salito, and a new guy called Pulaski, I believe. Pulaski, who's kind of working with him sort of quite as a new guy. He's like a family guy, and you kind of get a bit of background on all of them, like Sachs and Pulaski. Not so much on Salito, but certainly on Pulaski, you know quite a bit about him. And then this was the last thing I read, where essentially he was doing the, like, walking the crime scene for Rhyme, because Sachs was away. And here it is. Basically, they are running the scene, and then all of a sudden he hears that there's sort of a commotion. So Rhyme hears a commotion through the headset, and he can hear, like, he basically tells police something's going wrong, he needs help, and then it says here, moments of silence passed. Hours it felt. What was going on? God damn it, somebody let me know. But there was no response to this tacit demand. He went back to Pulaski's frequency. Ron? All he heard was a series of clicks, as if somebody whose throat had been cut was trying to communicate, though he no longer had a voice. And that was the last thing I read before I started reading Persians. I was like, no! Pulaski, I liked him! Don't kill him! So, like, I clearly cared enough about this character that Jeffrey Deaver had created that I didn't want him to die. So I was like, I must like the book, I suppose. So that was quite interesting. And then I read the Persians, which I didn't like at all, and I was like, I'd rather read Jeffrey Deaver right now. So that was really interesting. Also, something else I wanted to show you is, because obviously he's like a forensic analyst, and something he does, which is kind of shown in the book, is like he creates these massive whiteboards of like all the evidence he has, so you can kind of look at it all and step back and be like doing his rhyme thing, right? But it's very interesting because it's laid out in the book. So you've got like, this is the watchmaker, and then this is the crime scene, location, victim, perp, evidence. So it's like all laid out, and this is repeated throughout the book as like more evidence is found and more crime scenes pop up. So I found that very, very interesting. So obviously I really liked this book. It was actually probably a 4-star read for me, because I was engaged, I liked the characters, I clearly cared, I was kind of on board with Rhyme, I kind of liked this juxtaposition between Rhyme and Dance. I thought the killer duo was quite interesting, of their dynamic and like who they were and like the serial killer that was created essentially. It has very like the typical sort of Criminal Minds thing of like the teacher and the apprentice sort of thing was going on. I was really in that, so I was really enjoying it. And then many a book has ruined itself for me with the ending. Like sometimes, like when I watched Red Yellowface, for example, great book, but then I felt like the ending, like it felt to me like the author didn't know how to end the book and just ended it somehow. And pretty much everyone I've ever met that has read that book says it was a horrible ending. It was like, and this book, that I liked so much, I probably could have finished reading it probably like here. So like all of this was just like not good. Essentially it felt to me like Jeffrey Deaver was like trying to be super clever. So he like was twisting and twisting and twisting and putting so many twists on top of twists that you were like, what? And this will become clearer in the spoiler section when I actually describe the book and as it goes through. So if you want to know, keep around for that wild ride at the end there. It was wild. I once described it to my book binge mates, and they were just like, what? Like, it's just wild. Like, there was a twist, and I was like, ooh. And there was another twist, and I was like, ooh. And then there was more twists, and I was like, whoa. Wait, what? So unfortunately, it dropped down to 3 stars for me. Sorry, Jeffrey. I don't know what you were doing there at the end. It was a bit odd. Because he set up this perfect serial killer guy. And I was like, you could have just left it at that. But didn't. Anyways, so this is it for what I... Oh, the one thing I did want to mention, I have it here. Sex, this is just sort of a random thing, does have arthritis as well. Which I thought was quite interesting, because I don't often see people in books that have like a chronic health issue. Like I was quite happy, I was watching The Good Doctor, and one of the doctors in there has arthritis, and then Sex had arthritis. I found that very interesting. And then obviously Rhyme's paraplegic, which also was very interesting. Right, so let's get into the spoilers. Like I said, if you want to know why the ending was so wild, keep around. If not, thank you so much for listening. My book binge mate did say her parents love Jeffrey Deaver and read like all of his books. And I did like the book, I literally just did not like the ending. So I wouldn't say don't read Jeffrey Deaver. Hopefully they're not all like this. Yeah, and if you've read a Jeffrey Deaver or if you have good thriller recommendations, do leave them in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this, do let me know as well. But now let's get into the spoilers, so I can tell some of you why this book is so horrible at the end. So I'm gonna go literally from beginning to end on like how the book unfolded, just so you can go on this journey with me, if that makes sense. So basically at the beginning of the book, it becomes quite clear early on that there's 2 people who were killed, probably both male. One was clearly killed on a pier that had his wrists cut. There was a lot of blood. He wasn't found. There was just no body ever found. Another guy was found dead in an alley with like a bar atop his neck, essentially. And they were doing lots of crime scene-y stuff, and obviously he left those antique watches with the bodies as well. It becomes quite clear, quite early on that clearly this is some sort of torture thing that's going on, like the serial killer is clearly trying to, they find like a little torture booklet. He's clearly trying out like different torture devices on his victims. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm deeply into serial killers, so I was like, yeah, I'm here for it. And then, as I said, it's a duo. So there's, and we know this literally from like first or second chapter. There's Gerard Duncan, who is the mastermind, essentially the teacher, if you want to name him so. And there's Vincent. Vincent is basically a rapist, and he is working with Duncan because Duncan essentially promised him access to women to rape, but also very much taught him that they will not all be women. So it's like, but Vincent is very much not the smartest kind of guy, and he's sort of very much the apprentice. He's like learning from Duncan. There's a lot of like admiration from him for Duncan because he's obviously very smart. He has never been caught, whereas Vincent himself has been in prison. As it turns out, he raped his own sister over a period of days. So there's that going on, and Vincent himself also kind of has like multiple personalities, it seems. Like there is people that he calls Hungry Vincent, which is Vincent when he wants to like commit a crime, or just hungry. He eats a lot of junk food to kind of curb his impulses, if that makes sense. There's Clever Vincent when he has like a good idea and that sort of thing. So that was quite interesting. Let me look through my notes. So they're trying to follow the watchmaker clues. They track down the guy that sold him the clocks, and he tells him, oh yeah, he bought 10. So that then immediately goes, oh my god, he's gonna kill 10 people. He's only killed 2 so far. So that was like, wow. Like, this is the bit in Criminal Mind, right? So when they were like, oh, cut to commercial break. At the same time that is happening, Amelia Sachs is also investigating an unconnected criminal case of a businessman that committed suicide, but she thinks it seems weird. It doesn't seem like a suicide because he had a broken thumb, and how would he have tied the noose, sort of thing. So she starts investigating this suspicious suicide, realizes that the whole case is about corrupt cops, and essentially in one of her first cases finds herself deep into like corrupt cop territory, which is obviously quite intimidating. She herself, though, comes from a family of cops. Her father was a cop. Her grandfather, I believe, was a cop. So she's very boisterous, and she's very confident, and obviously she works with Rhyme, who's very, very well acknowledged in the crime fighting departments, and can get like special things, like if he wants Amelia Sachs on a case, she will be on the case, if that makes a lot of sense. She, in the course of that investigation, also finds out that her father apparently was a corrupt cop, and she very, very much struggles with that, feeling like she never knew her father at all, sort of thing, like he wasn't the man that she thought he was. So that was very interesting to read about. And it kind of cuts in between those two cases and what Amelia's doing, and it's mainly about the watchmaker, though. The watchmaker then tries to kill a florist, but is basically caught beforehand. They then know that it's a duo of killers. They have like the what you call it, the photos, the like sketch of what they look like. They then try and kill a soldier who's home on leave, who's about to be awarded a medal. Also, again, unsuccessfully. Did I say successfully? They work, him and Dance work together, and slowly, begrudgingly, actually realize that they each bring something that can help each other. And Catherine Dance basically sets a trap where they trap Vincent, because they realize that Vincent is part of the duo and they can trap him So they trap him. He kind of immediately confesses to everything he knows, because that's the kind of guy he is. They're kind of trying to work out why are they killing these victims. They seem very random. They don't know each other. There's no connection between these victims. So it's all very interesting, and you're trying, it's like a race against time right before he kills the next victim. And then there is a sort of higher up police detective called Dennis Baker, who's also helping with the investigation. And at one point he's investigating like an empty warehouse, and there's a moment where it's like he stumbled upon the watchmaker, but then the watchmaker helps him up and they have a conversation, and you're like, oh, he's in on it. And you're like, ooh, interesting, right? And then it turns out that the reason that basically the watchmaker isn't a real serial killer, it was just a ruse, so they can kill Amelia Sachs for the case that she is working on with the corrupt cops, because Dennis Baker is deeply involved with that, and basically he hired the watchmaker so he can kill Amelia Sachs and make it look like she just got killed as part of this random serial killer. And I was like, interesting, okay. And then they try and kill Amelia Sachs unsuccessfully, or Baker tries to kill Amelia Sachs unsuccessfully. And then there's like this scene where Rhyme is like, the watchmaker's over there, let's go talk to him. I was like, okay, random. And then they get Gerard Duncan, and they start talking to him, and he reveals that actually his friend was killed from Dennis Baker and what they were doing with the corrupt cop thing, and he instigated that whole thing, that he's a hired serial, well, a hit man, couldn't think of the word then, that he's a hitman, so that Dennis Baker would essentially like hire him to kill Amelia Sachs, and he could set Dennis Baker up for that murder because he didn't know who to trust, so he couldn't just go to police. So, because they're like all potentially involved, right? So he wanted to do this way. He didn't ever actually kill anybody. All the blood they found was his own blood. The guy that they found in the alley had already actually died, and he just stole the corpse. Blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was like the second twist, and you were like, oh, okay, I'm with it. Okay, cool, yeah, makes sense. Cool, with it. However, and this is when it got just bad. They then realize, hold on, Duncan's story doesn't add up. This friend he was talking about couldn't have been his friend from the military, blah blah blah. And Catherine Downs also looks at like the interviews they had with him and realizes that, oh no, he's not telling the truth about something, blah, blah, blah. You then, because you read both sides, discover that Jared Duncan is actually a man called Charles Hale, who grew up in a very, very normal household, but apparently just was a psychopath. I mean, it does exist, but interesting choice. And has always had a thing for like plans and making schedules and being like, you know, perfect in his schedule and plan making, and that's apparently his motivation, which I thought was weak, to say the least. And his whole thing is essentially about executing the most perfect plan, and he doesn't care if his most perfect plan is a murder, because he's a psychopath or sociopath, whatever one it is, and he doesn't care about people. He just cares about executing a perfect plan. So, for example, and I've got a quote. He's also really into time, and this is actually quite a nice quote that I liked. Time is a great teacher, but unfortunately, it kills all its pupils. I quite like that. Luis Hector Berlioz. Anyways, so he at one point essentially is like can't quite remember if he's like a Wall Street kind of guy or an investment kind of guy. Essentially, he's trying to invest in this Mexican thing, and he's being alerted to the fact that there is like a problem with like a council guy in the council not wanting to go ahead and somebody else not wanting to go ahead, and then he basically is being told that this guy is like invulnerable because he really protects himself because he knows he's a target because it's Mexico and blah blah blah. So it says here, invulnerable, mused Charles Hale in a whisper. He nodded. Not long after this meeting, 5 apparently unrelated articles appeared in the October 23 edition of El Heraldo de Mexico. A fire in the office of Mexicana Seguridad Privado, a security services company, resulted in the evacuation of all employees. No injuries were reported and the damage was minor. A hacker shut down the main computer of a mobile phone provider, resulting in a disruption of service in a portion of Mexico City and its southern suburbs for about 2 hours. A truck caught fire in the middle of Highway 160, south of Mexico City near Chalco, completely blocking northbound traffic. Henry Porfirio, the head of the Distrito Federal Commercial Real Estate Licensing Commission, that's the guy that's invulnerable, died when his SUV crashed through a one-lane bridge and plunged 40 feet, struck a propane tank parked there, and exploded. The incident occurred when drivers were following directions from a flagman to pull off the highway and take a side road to avoid a major traffic jam. Other vehicles had made it successfully over the bridge earlier, but the commissioner's vehicle, being armor-plated, was too heavy for the old structure despite a sign that stated it could support the SUV's weight. Porfirio's security chief knew about the traffic jam and had been trying to contact him about a safer route, but was unable to because of the commissioner's mobile phone was not working. His was the only vehicle that fell. Remember, the mobile phones weren't working. Porfirio's son was not in the SUV, which he otherwise would have been, because the child came down with a minor case of food poisoning the day before and remained at home with his mother. Erasmo Saleno, a senior interior official in the Mexican federal government, was arrested after a tip led police to his summer home, where they found a stash of weapon and cocaine. Curiously, reporters had been alerted too, including a photographer connected with the Los Angeles Times. So essentially, he was making all of that happen so he could get that real estate development happening. That's the kind of person he is, right? So, let me just check the other quotes that I still have, just to make sure I haven't missed one. Yeah. So, when they then realized that Gerald Duncan, aka Charles Hale, was talking bullshit about like trying to get vengeance on Dennis Baker, they were like, what is he up to? And it then appeared that he was trying to steal a clock, because he's so into watches and clocks, right? And there's this like unique, one-of-a-kind piece that's in a New York museum, and they saw him enter the New York museum, and they knew he had some sort of thing, and they were like, the only way to get to that clock is once a day when it unlocks or something, but that's like connected to the like massive, like the big, basically New York clock, and that regulates air traffic control, planes, trains, basically everything. And they realized that if he wants to steal that clock, he's gonna have to reset that big clock so that it will open for the little clock. And he did not care about the fact that planes could crash, you know, and trains could, you know, crash and all of that. And he just took that on because he wanted to get this really, really famous clock. And you're like, okay. So then you're there and you are reading about them trying to figure this out, right? And it's like, okay, this is happening. Give me just a second. Sorry, I just had to check something. Anyway, so you're like, oh, racing against time, trying to stop him from changing that clock. But then you're like, wait, what's happening now? That doesn't make sense with what we thought. Because, no! That wasn't the plan either. Do you see what I'm saying? This wasn't great. So what the actual plan was that he had been hired by some white supremacists, like this weird white supremacist group, to bomb the award ceremony that the soldier woman that he had tried to kill earlier was going to. And as it turns out, all the people he tried to murder were actually in some way connected to that award ceremony. Like the florist was doing the flowers for the award ceremony, that sort of thing. And basically he had executed this plan where he like pretended to be a serial killer so he could get all the things he needed to execute his actual plan, which was to bomb this award ceremony. So you're like, oh my god, they don't know that's what the actual plan is. Like, how are they gonna figure that one out? So obviously he does figure it out. And there's like, I have a quote here for this, where it's like, so how did you figure this one out, Lincoln? We heard X, we heard Y, all about some boys in blue taking money they should have been doing, and then some bizarre fella leaving clocks as calling cards. The next thing we know, the airports are closed, and there's a priority 1 security alert at HUD interrupting my nap. Rhyme detailed the frantic process of kinetic, essentially what dance does, and forensic work that led them to figure out the watchmaker's real plan. Catherine Dance had suggested, I don't know why I can't read when I do this, had suggested that he was lying about his mission in New York. So they had looked into the evidence again. Some of it pointed to the possible theft of a rare artifact in the Metropolitan Museum. But the more he thought about that, the less likely that seemed. Rhyme figured Duncan had made up the story about the undelivered package to the Met, just to get him focused on the museum. Somebody as careful as the watchmaker wouldn't leave the trail he did. He turned on Vincent, knowing the rapist would give up the church where he had left the other museum programs referring to the mechanism. He mentioned it to Hallerstein and to Vincent as well. No, he was up to something else, but what? Catherine Dance reviewed the interview tape again several times and decided that he might have been lying when he said he picked the supposed victims simply because their locations meant easy getaways. Which meant, Rhyme told Del Rey, that he picked them for some other purpose. So did they have anything in common? And then essentially he realizes that they were all somehow connected to this award ceremony, saved the day, and essentially this white supremacist group that had hired him gets found out, the guy dies, the wife gets arrested, the daughter that's like in this very abusive household gets rescued and put into foster care, and it turns out Rhyme and Sax had met her before. Who would have thought, right? And anyways, and then at the end, you know Jackson? Rhyme's dog, who he was actually trying to get rid of, Sax gives it to the girl that was rescued and is now going into foster care. And I'm like, this girl's going into foster care. Her foster parents might not want a dog, might not have capacity for a dog. This girl has never had a dog in her life. She's got a lot of mental health issues. You probably don't want to give her a dog. I was like, why are you doing this? Anyways, Charles Hale simply disappears into the void because he's obviously worked out that he had been caught, that his plan hadn't worked. He's upset. He's like, oh, my perfect plan. All of this that I have done did not work. Sort of until we meet again, sort of thing. And also at the end, Sax finds out that her dad wasn't actually corrupt, which was quite nice, right? So all in all, I liked this book. until it started just going completely off its axis. And I was like, what are you doing, Jeffrey Deaver? Like, what is happening? Sorry, I have another quote thingy in here. Oh. Yeah, I was just like I was with it maybe until Duncan had done it as a like vengeance. I didn't like that as much as him actually being a serial killer. I wish they would have literally just left it at that. Like, I felt it need, like, and the twist being that Dennis Baker had hired him and maybe he wasn't a real serial killer. That was enough. Like, I just don't get why the story changed and then changed again and then changed again and then changed again and then like, I was like, what are you doing, Jeffrey? It's like Jeffrey Deaver just suddenly went into this weird state of like, I've written this perfect book. It's too perfect. Let me destroy it, and ripped it all up. I don't know. It was weird. I don't understand what happened there at the end. Why an author would do such a thing. It was wild. Jeffrey, if you watch this, I don't know what you were thinking. Yeah. I don't know. If you have read it or will ever read it, please do let me know what you think about this. It's wild. Weird what is happening. Anyways, thank you so much for listening as always. If you're interested, if you like my videos, do hit the little subscribe button, because I'd love to have more subscribers and more people watching my videos. It takes a lot of time to make, as I found out starting this channel, but I do really enjoy it. I love talking about books, and I will rant about books to anybody who will listen, including an anonymous YouTube audience. So thank you so much for listening and have a lovely day.